Last night, we got word that the Georgia grand jury issued 10 indictments. We didn't know who was going to be indicted. The assumption was that it was going to be Donald Trump. After we wrapped Timcast IRL, that was the only thing we knew. And I was speaking with one of our producers about what do we title this? Because the segment was going to be titled Indictments for Trump. And I said, actually, the indictments could be for his lawyers. We don't know for sure. So we're going to hold off on this one because all we know is that an indictment was voted on, but we don't know for who. Early this morning, around 1 or 2 a.m., there was a press conference where it was revealed Trump and 18 co-defendants were charged with racketeering, multiple felonies in Georgia 2020 election probe. Charges in the sprawling indictment include racketeering and conspiracy, according to NBC News. The 18 co-defendants, for the most part, Trump's lawyers. Yeah. People are saying on Twitter that we're in banana republic territory. I mean, I think I reject that. It's dumb. We are in outright revolution territory. Banana republic, fine, sure. It's a reference to these fake governments propped up, etc. No, I think we're facing full-scale revolution. You've got a seditious conspiracy by elements of local and federal government to cheat in the 2024 election by levying false charges against Trump and his lawyers. We're talking about legal counsel. Donald Trump facing legitimate questions about the 2020 election, notably the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I believe that's the paper's name, reported that there were duplicate ballots scanned and that after a watchdog group caught this, they were removed. Now, hold on. You say they were caught and removed. Yes, because a watchdog group caught and had them removed. Upon hearing this, is it reasonable for a person in this election to say, we got to do an audit, we got to figure out what's going on? I certainly think so. Trump then confers with legal counsel about strategies and how to assess claims of impropriety in Georgia, burst water pipes, etc. Whether or not you agree or disagree with the narrative, what would someone do? What would you do in an election when you're hearing about these things going on? As I've stated since the beginning, there should be a full-scale audit. Why? If you don't actually investigate the claims made, then you are going to end up with half the country pitted against half the country, and you face civil war or full-scale cultural collapse. This is the point of a legal system. For this, Donald Trump has been indicted, and so have his lawyers. So this is not, in my view, legitimate in any way. This is not, I don't like the phrase banana republic. This is militarized weaponization of law enforcement across multiple jurisdictions. I believe we're looking at 91 plus indictments, the targeting of legal counsel, saying that anyone who dares to provide constitutionally protected legal advice will also be brought up on charges. This is, I don't know what you call it, fifth generational civil war, revolution. History will determine whether or not we are facing revolution, civil war, or justice against an evil criminal enterprise. Yeah. If fighting erupts over whatever happens in the next year, perhaps they'll say civil war. If these individuals imprison Trump and his lawyers, and I believe the next step is going to be media personalities who encouraged Trump to pursue this, encouraged the fraud narrative, encouraged protests in Washington, D.C. They're next. They'll say that it was criminal incitement, that it was conspiracy, etc. They're already saying that there are several unindicted co-conspirators in this Georgia charge against Trump. They're next. Depending on who wins is how history will dictate what happened. If the far left extremists and the criminal seditious conspiracy against the United States, that is, the Democrat prosecutor and their allies, people like Jack Smith, if they win, they will simply write that they averted an insurrection. If honor, integrity, justice, and the American Constitution wins, that is, the right to legal counsel, for instance, and free speech, then we will say it was an attempted revolution. If fighting breaks out, call it a civil war. Let me read for you what NBC News has to say, and then we'll go through the indictment. Many people are pointing out that to justify conspiracy charges, they're claiming that Donald Trump telling people to watch TV is illegal. Well, we'll clarify that. In the indictment, there are many things, and you'll see these repeated on Twitter, and they're sort of correct, sort of incorrect. They show that Donald Trump is being accused of furthering his conspiracy by tweeting things like watch OAN and calling Mike Pence a wimp. They are not saying that these activities are illegal. What they're saying is that when all of them are combined, it amounts to a criminal conspiracy. The assumption from many is that the goal here is to get a rapid conviction of Donald Trump. It will likely be appealed. The Supreme Court may intervene, but as Alan Dershowitz said, Trump will be convicted. The Supreme Court will likely intervene and remove these charges. But I'll say this before we read. I think this is a civil war. I suppose you can argue it's not hot conflict, so it's more like a bleeding Kansas, civil unrest or revolutionary period, whatever, I guess. I guess people don't refer to Weimar Germany as a civil war when the Nazis were taking over and then eventually did. Just a revolution or a shift happened, I suppose. But I think it's fair to say that you're in it. You're in it because it's as simple as this. Either you have Democrats engaging in the weaponization of government against their political opponents, knowing they'll lose. And this is their only way to win in 2024, win power, not the election, because this is cheating to subvert an election. Or you have Donald Trump and his allies conspiring to overthrow the U.S. government and its duly elected representatives. Take your pick. It's one or the other, in which case, welcome to a civil war. Cold Civil War, call it that. That's what that Princeton professor referred to it as. But again, I will stress, take your pick. Is it Trump conspiring with his allies to overthrow the government with an insurrection at the Capitol, an attempt to actually seize the seat of power by force? Or are Democrats in multiple jurisdictions across this country filing charges against Trump to cheat and steal power? It's one or the other, and that's it. There is no circumstance where it's two criminal enterprises fighting each other to gain criminal control of the government. Well, I suppose you could argue a very small possibility. There's no argument where both factions are just innocent in this and misconstruing what's going on. No, it's the worst. Let's read this, and then I'll show you some of the indictment, and then we'll talk about where this all goes, because I just think I would not be surprised to hear of prominent U.S. individuals fleeing the country already. We know about the billionaires building doomsday bunkers on islands in New Zealand and other places. We know about the escalation of war that's going on. There are already stories of people in the U.S. either fleeing their state because it's Democrat or Republican. And we've already heard stories of the ultra wealthy preparing to flee or having fled to certain locations. Throughout the past several years, there have been many prominent individuals, lawyers, and journalists who have left the United States to go live abroad because of the extent of persecution that we've been seeing escalate. NBC News reports it as such. Former President Donald Trump and top allies, including his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and his former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and a top former Justice Department official, Jeffrey Clark, were indicted Monday on felony charges in connection with efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in Georgia. The sweeping 41-count indictment also names lawyers John Eastman, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebrough, Jenna Ellis, and Ray Smith, along with several others. All were charged with violating Georgia's RICO Act, Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organization. In an indictment handed up by the judge around 9 p.m. and made public just before 11 p.m., Trump was charged with felony racketeering and numerous conspiracy charges, court filings show. I'm of the opinion that there is a criminal conspiracy, a seditious conspiracy against the United States levied by Democrat personalities for a variety of reasons, but I'll give you one. Yesterday, around 1 p.m., Reuters obtained documents, court documents that were posted by the Fulton County Court. Charges filed against Trump, a judge assigned. They were published by the court. Now, lawyers on Twitter, many personalities said, how is it that the court received charging documents assigned a judge to the case before the grand jury had convened. The grand jury hadn't even voted on an indictment, and the court had already said they were intending to prosecute. Because, my friends, the conspiracy against Donald Trump goes a bit beyond just this prosecutor who's already fundraising off of this, and it extends to judges and other prominent personalities, including Republicans in Georgia. There's a lot of people in on it. I don't know to what extent, but at least a couple dozen, it would seem, and they know exactly what they're doing. Here's the scary reality. I don't see this as just some criminal conspiracy or seditious conspiracy. I do think there is a seditious conspiracy against the United States government to subvert and steal the election in 2024 by indicting the frontrunner. But I think we're also looking at a dangerous, standalone, complex level situation, which is why I say civil war. For those that aren't familiar with the concept of a standalone complex, it is as such. There are actions taken by numerous individuals that appear to be in concert, but they're not. It gives the appearance of a conspiracy when in fact it's just in furtherance of a shared goal. It's a brilliant concept. You have, let's say, 30 people across the country who all engage in some kind of surreptitious behavior where you assume, certainly, with all their actions benefiting each other, it was a conspiracy, but in fact it wasn't. It's just a concerted ideological effort. I believe that's what we're looking at here with Georgia, with New York, with D.C., with Democrats. You don't need there to be a conspiracy because all of these people are working towards the same end using nefarious means. That's what I think we're dealing with here. That's why I say civil war. A seditious conspiracy or coup or whatever you want to call it would be a small group of people conspiring to steal power. But what we have here are ideologically entrapped individuals across the board in multiple jurisdictions who are all doing whatever they can to steal power and cheat in the 2024 election. That's why I say so. It's an ideological push among a large faction. The other day, my friend said to me, as the trope goes, there can never be a civil war in this country. Who's going to fight? You think Trump supporters on the left are going to go out and march? I said, no. Do you know what a civil war is? Have you ever read history about how they begin? It is a small faction of ideologically captured individuals who start fighting. It spreads to the general public and then it erupts. Perhaps it doesn't reach the level of full-scale conflict like the American Civil War. But if it does, then what we are dealing with today will be considered the Civil War period. Perhaps they won't say it was a civil war until you get state-on-state conflict, or I don't think you need state-on-state conflict, you need factional violence. But right now, this is that period. I wonder what they'll call it. The Trump era? The lead up to the Civil War? I don't know. It really just depends on what happens. If Trump and his allies are crushed, and the media personalities who defended him and supported him are indicted and crushed, they will just say they averted a civil war. If the seditious conspiracy against the U.S. government from these Democrat personalities is stopped, people will say a civil war was averted. Here's the indictment. Fulton County Superior Court filed August 14th. Amazing. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Mark Meadows, Kenneth Chesborough, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Ellis, Ray Smith, Robert Shealy, Michael Roman, David Schaefer, Sean Still, Stephen Lee, Harrison Floyd, Trevian Cootie, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Graham Hall, Misty Hampton. Misty Hampton and Kathleen Latham, my understanding is, were election officials who invited Trump's team to come in and take a look at voting systems that had problems during the election. According to CNN, a written invitation was given to Trump's team. Did Trump's team know who this person was? Let me break down for you. Trump contacts a legal team, a firm, and he says, I want to investigate these claims about impropriety. They do. The individuals, the lawyers, and several people make contact with these election officials who then say that they're going to allow them to come and take a look. Georgia has now indicted all of them as a criminal conspiracy. Makes me wonder about what really went down and about the claims made by Trump and his supporters in 2020 about impropriety. Because, boy, it certainly seems like they're trying to cover something up, doesn't it? But I'll tell you what I think is the simple solution. I certainly think there was impropriety, but I think the gist of it was the governor, Secretary of State, Democrats and Republicans changed the rules to heavily benefit Democrats. I don't think they needed to fabricate ballots or anything like that. I don't think they needed it. But what they got out of all of this was criminal conspiracy charges. It feels more like bait to me. Look, if you have ballot harvesting and ballot chasing, you don't need to create fake ballots. And a lot of people say the signatures were BS and they were duplicate counting and all this stuff. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. That's using the system as it stands in nefarious ways. I guess I'm trying to differentiate from manufacturing fake ballots and forging signatures to going to a nursing home and then claiming to be a representative for all of these individuals, having them sign off on these documents and getting the votes you need through nefarious means. Donald Trump and his team then demand to know what happened. They engage in this behavior, which results in conspiracy charges against all of them. If Donald Trump did nothing and came out and said, they beat us in the ground game, it was ballot harvesting, they changed the rules, we have to file lawsuits, what would they charge him with? And they seem to have found anything to go after him. Now, again, I do believe there was a degree of impropriety in 2020, but I believe that Donald Trump lost in 2020 because executives of several states, Georgia included, changed the rules to benefit Democrats. That's it. That is the simple explanation. They made it very, very easy for Democrats to find the ballots by ballot chasing and ballot harvesting. That's how Biden got so many votes. People locked in their homes were told Trump's at fault and you should vote for him. They went to nursing homes and said, you can sign us as your caregiver, and then we will collect the ballots. And there you go. Mike Cernovich tweeted, this is collusion. Georgia GOP politician refers to the Trump RICO indictment as our opportunity to get rid of Trump. He says, yep. He doesn't say this is our opportunity to get rid of Trump. He says Trump damaged the Republican Party, and now we have the opportunity to get in someone else and to change this and blah, blah, blah. Oh, boy. We're already in dangerous territory. Here's the initial charging document that was accidentally published 12:39 p.m. They've not explained how this happened, but it shows you that the grand jury was fake, that these Democrats have conspired and pre-planned to bring charges regardless of what the grand jury had to say. Let's give a shout out to two of our liberal friends here, Kyle Kulinski. Kyle Kulinski says, in total, there are 91 criminal charges against Trump when you factor in all the cases, and the best the right can do is scream free speech, call the prosecutors Democrats, and say Fani Willis' dad was a commie. LOL. This is unbecoming of you, good Sir Kulinski, because we're fans. Here's the best I can say. Donald Trump hired lawyers who gave him legal advice, which is constitutionally protected. You can make arguments about the actions taken, but they're charging his lawyers with crimes for providing legal advice. Jeffrey Clark was a State Department lawyer. You will never be able to come to me and claim the charges are legitimate when they're going after legal counsel. And the best you can do, Kyle, is make the argument that the right is claiming the prosecutor's a Democrat. I don't care if the prosecutor was a communist, Green Party, an American Nazi Party, or otherwise. Donald Trump hired lawyers who gave him advice. He took legal actions. They have written invitations to go to the Coffee County to take a look at the voting systems. CNN confirmed that. And for this, RICO charges, laughably insane. Ed Krasenstein, all the same. He says sitting U.S. Congressman Lauren Boebert called it a banana republic because Fani Willis in Georgia unanimously convinced a grand jury made up of hardworking American people that there was probable cause. Seriously, dude? They published the charges before the grand jury even voted on it. This is why I'm like, it's civil war. Because Kyle Kulinski and Ed Krasenstein don't actually care about facts like that. They don't care. They're like, oh, it's just normal stuff. It's not normal stuff. Here's the next thing that happened. I'm not going to call out any of the individuals because I don't want to bring, this is not what I do. But there were many individuals who went on social media and advocated for some type of unrest on January 6th, who said things like, insinuated that people should breach the Capitol or something to that effect, who called for people to go out into the streets. If they are criminally charging Trump's legal counsel, how long do you think it will be before they criminally charge media personalities for incitement? Incitement is a clearer path than providing legal counsel. But the legal counsel are high-profile individuals and Trump allies. And the first thing they want to do is make sure nobody can get a lawyer to defend them. That's what we saw with January 6th. Legal firms dropping clients saying, we don't have anything to do with this. Yep. It's a revolutionary period, or it's a civil war. That's where we are going. There are many personalities who, during January 6th, cheered for it. They're next, after the first media personalities. Jamie Raskin already said to the January 6th committee, here are videos of Trump supporters encouraging what happened, calling for more. How long do you think until D.C. says we need to silence anyone who supports Trump? First, you need to make sure anybody who supported Trump physically in any way, many of these bumbling dotards on January 6th who walked into a building having no idea what was going on, first, they get locked up. They're told to disavow Trump, to say Trump is wrong, Trump was evil, it's Trump's fault, Trump told you to do it. Some people have refused. Those that have, they've been locked up for years without charge or trial. I'm not exaggerating. That's a fact. Still to this day in jail, solitary, being tortured because they refused to say Trump told them to do it. Some of these people deserve to be in jail. They were fighting violently and stormed the gates, tore down the barricades. No question. They should be in jail. They should get a fair trial, Some of these people didn't know what was going on. On the other side of the building, the door was open. They were let in. This is why they're going after people to the extent that they raided the wrong woman up in Alaska. They stormed into her house because she looked like someone who was in the building. That's why they killed Ashley Babbitt. They want to make sure anybody who engaged in physical activity to support Trump begs, gets on their knees and says, please. And many of them did. Many of them took the agreement where they issued statements saying that they were wrong and it was stupid and Trump was a bad person. They did it. Next, they're going after lawyers to make sure that anyone who provides legal counsel to those who challenge them or support the January 6ers, you will be locked up. The next move is obvious. They have to go after any social media influencer or media personality who encouraged protest or entertained Trump's arguments. Anyone who said there was fraud or impropriety, they will say, colluded and was part of the conspiracy. And there are very prominent personalities who were in direct communication with Trump's legal team, with Trump himself, who then went on TV or the internet and said, this is true, this happened. They're going to say those individuals furthered the conspiracy and were in on it, that they had spoken with Donald Trump and explained how they would go and advocate for this to try and shift the perception in this country into supporting Trump's wild allegations and crackpot claims. Then there were YouTubers, people on social media. These are smaller personalities, but they actually went on their channels and they encouraged people to engage in riotous behaviors on January 6th. They're next. What's after that? The periphery. Anyone who supports Trump, anyone who publicly defended him. If they can claim that providing legal counsel is a criminal conspiracy, let me pull up the indictment. If they can claim that furtherance of this conspiracy, let me just jump down to some acts. Let's see if we can find something. Here we go. On or about the 14th day of December, David Schaefer instructed unindicted co-conspirator individual 15, interesting, whose identity is known to the grand jury, to deliver to the office of the governor of Georgia a document signed David J. Schaefer and Sean Micah Thresher Still, titled Notice of Filing of Electoral College Vacancy. The document contained multiple false statements. It was an overt act. If you can have lawyers file claims and documents and say that's a criminal conspiracy, that's in furtherance of a conspiracy, What can they say about you? They say that John Eastman sent an email to Kenneth Chesebro and unindicted co-conspirator, privileged and confidential, January 6 scenario. As for hearings, I think both are necessary. The fact that they have multiple slates of electors demonstrates the uncertainty of either. That should be enough. And I agree with Ken that Judiciary Committee hearings on the constitutionally of the Electoral College Count Act could invite counterviews that we do not believe should constrain Pence or Grassley in the exercise of power they have under the 12th Amendment. If lawyers providing legal advice to each other on the constitutional actions they're allowed to take is a criminal conspiracy, what can they say about you? Of course, the real issue, I believe, is Donald Trump solicited Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and General Richard Donahue to make a false statement saying, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressmen. If they can argue that there is no qualification for these statements, they're false, period. Therefore, what can they say about you? Let's break some of this down. Donald Trump, believing he has evidence of impropriety and is conferring with his legal team, then says, look, just say it's corrupt and we're working on it. That's a criminal conspiracy, they say. Now, I think the egregious acts, I'm not sure. I think, what do they have? Number, is it perhaps 80? It's not 87, is it? No. There were actions where they claimed, here we go. Act 100. Donald Trump caused to be tweeted from the Twitter account. Hearings from Atlanta on the Georgia election overturned now being broadcast. Check out OAN, Newsmax, and many more. Brian Kemp should resign. This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. That's the important point that you guys should hear. If Donald Trump tweeted, hey, take a look at what's going on TV, and that's furtherance of a conspiracy, how long until they say it was criminal incitement for people on Twitter to say similarly? I do not believe it ends here. I think we are going to see a whole lot more. So I hope you're ready. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I don't think that after everything we've seen, they simply say that this is the line. This is the line. No, I think they need to make sure that there is no positive messaging for Donald Trump in 2024, because even if he gets indicted, people are still supporting him and telling people to vote for him. They're going to have to shut that down. It may start simply. YouTube and other big platforms will just start banning people like they did with Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, Laura Loomer, etc., Milo Yiannopoulos. But I think that they're going to go a bit more heavy-handed than that. Jamie Raskin already claimed that people were inciting. So we'll see what happens next. More to come. I'll leave it there. We'll see what the updates are. Next video is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I'll see you all then.